The sun was beating down hard that Saturday afternoon, the kind of heat that makes you want to jump straight into cool water. 12-year-old Maya couldn't wait to get to the community pool. She'd been looking forward to this all week, especially since her two best friends were coming along. "Come on, we're going to miss the best spot," Maya called out to her friends as they walked down the sidewalk, their pool bags bouncing against their shoulders. The three girls were giggling about something that happened at school. The kind of silly stuff that only makes sense when you're 12 and summer vacation feels like it'll last forever. The Riverside Community Pool sat right in the middle of their neighborhood. Surrounded by a tall fence and perfectly trimmed hedges, Maya had been coming here since her family moved to the area 2 years ago. She knew which diving board had the best bounce, which spot in the shade was perfect for breaks, and exactly how cold the water felt on the first jump in. At the entrance gate, Maya pulled out her family's membership card from her bag. It was one of those plastic cards with their name printed on it, a little worn at the edges from being used so much. The teenage boy working the entrance barely looked up as he scanned it. The system beeped green, and he waved them through with a quick nod. But before the girls could take more than a few steps toward the changing rooms, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me. Girls, stop right there." Maya turned around to see a woman marching toward them. She was maybe in her mid-40s, wearing expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head and a designer cover-up that probably cost more than Maya's entire summer wardrobe. Her face was twisted up in what looked like anger mixed with something else Maya couldn't quite place. "Can I help you?" Maya asked politely, the way her mother had always taught her to speak to adults. "Yes, you certainly can," the woman said, crossing her arms over her chest. "You can tell me how you got into this pool." Maya blinked, confused. We have a membership card. I just showed it at the gate." "I see," the woman said, but her tone made it clear she didn't believe a word of it. "And where exactly did you get this so-called membership card?" One of Maya's friends shifted uncomfortably. The other one whispered, "Maybe we should just go." But Maya stood her ground even though her heart was starting to beat faster. "My mom bought it. We live 3 blocks from here on Maple Street. We've been members for 2 years. The woman let out a laugh that didn't sound like she thought anything was funny. "Maple Street, really? I know everyone on Maple Street and I've never seen you before." "Well, maybe you don't know everyone," Maya said quietly, feeling her face get hot. That seemed to make the woman even angrier. She stepped closer, and Maya instinctively took a step back. "Don't get smart with me, young lady. I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I know who belongs here and who doesn't." By now, other people at the pool were starting to notice what was happening. A few adults had stopped what they were doing to watch. Some kids were staring from the pool. Maya felt like shrinking into the ground. "Ma'am, we really do have a membership," one of Maya's friends said, her voice shaking a little. "The guy at the gate let us in. That kid." The woman scoffed, gesturing toward the entrance. "He's probably on his phone half the time. He doesn't pay attention to who's coming in and out." She turned and called out to the young worker at the gate. "Hey, did you actually check these girls' membership or did you just let them walk in?" The teenage boy looked uncomfortable as people stared at him. He walked over, looking confused about what was happening. "Yeah, I scanned her card. It came up valid in the system." "Let me see that card," the woman demanded, holding out her hand to Maya. Maya hesitated. Something about this felt wrong, but she didn't know what else to do. She pulled the card out again and held it up so the woman could see it but didn't hand it over. The woman squinted at it, then shook her head. "This could be fake or stolen. How do I know you didn't just find this somewhere?" "Because it has my last name on it," Maya said, her voice coming out louder than she meant it to. She was getting frustrated now and scared, and she could feel tears starting to build up behind her eyes. She did not want to cry in front of everyone. "Johnson," the woman read from the card, her lip curling slightly. "Well, that doesn't prove anything. You could have taken it from someone's bag in the locker room last time you snuck in here." "We didn't sneak in anywhere," Maya's friend protested. "Why are you doing this?" A woman who had been sitting on a lounge chair nearby stood up and walked over. "Excuse me, but I've seen these girls here before. They come here all the time. What's the problem?" The first woman whirled around. "The problem is that we pay good money for our memberships, and we have a right to know who's using our facilities. This is a private pool for residents only." "And they clearly have a valid membership," the other woman pointed out. "The system confirmed it." "Systems can be fooled," the angry woman shot back. She pulled her phone out of her pocket. "You know what? I'm calling the police. Let them sort this out. Maya felt like ice water had been dumped over her head. The police? We didn't do anything wrong. If you didn't do anything wrong, then you have nothing to worry about, the woman said, already dialing. She walked a few feet away, but spoke loud enough that everyone could hear her. Yes, hello? I need to report a situation at the Riverside Community Pool. There are some girls here who I believe are trespassing. They claim to have a membership, but I'm almost certain they're lying. Maya looked at her friends and saw her own fear reflected in their faces. One of them was already crying quietly. The other grabbed Maya's hand and squeezed it. More people had gathered now, forming a loose circle around them. Some looked concerned. Others just seemed curious, like they were watching a show. The teenage worker stood off to the side, looking like he wanted to disappear. They'll be here in about 10 minutes, the woman announced, putting her phone back in her pocket. She said it like she'd just accomplished something important. We'll get this straightened out soon enough. Can I call my mom? Maya asked, her voice small. You can tell everything to the police when they get here, the woman replied. But the lady who had defended them earlier spoke up again. She has a right to call her parent. She's a child, for heaven's sake. The angry woman rolled her eyes but waved her hand dismissively. Fine, call whoever you want. Maya's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone. She found her mom's number and pressed call, praying that she'd pick up even though she was at work. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Hey, sweetie. Her mom's voice came through warm and familiar. Everything okay? Maya's voice cracked as she tried to explain. Mom, I'm at the pool and there's this lady, and she called the police on us and we didn't do anything wrong. I swear we just showed our card like always. And, slow down, baby, her mother said, and Maya could hear the change in her voice from relaxed to alert in an instant. Take a breath and tell me exactly what happened. Maya tried to explain everything to her mom while the woman who had called the police stood there with her arms crossed, watching her like a hawk. Other people at the pool had their phones out now, and Maya wasn't sure if they were texting or recording, but it made everything feel even more overwhelming. I don't understand what we did wrong, Maya said into the phone, trying hard not to let her voice shake too much. We used our card just like always. But this lady keeps saying we're lying and that we stole it or something. Her mother was quiet for a second, and when she spoke again, her voice had that tone Maya recognized, the calm one that actually meant she was really, really upset. Baby, I need you to stay calm for me, okay? Don't argue with anyone. Just wait there, and I'm leaving work right now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The police are coming, Maya whispered. I know. It's going to be fine. Just stay calm and be respectful. Don't let anyone make you feel like you did something wrong because you didn't. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. I love you. I'll be there soon. The call ended and Maya stood there holding her phone, feeling like the ground wasn't quite solid under her feet. Her friends huddled closer to her, and she could tell they were scared too. This was supposed to be a fun day at the pool, and now they were waiting for the police like they were criminals or something. The minutes crawled by. The woman who had called the police made a show of going back to her lounge chair, but she kept glancing over at them, making sure they didn't try to leave. Some of the other pool members went back to what they were doing, but plenty of them kept watching. Maya heard whispers and saw people pointing. Then they heard the sirens. 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot and Maya's stomach dropped. She'd never been in trouble with the police before. She'd never even talked to a police officer except for the friendly ones who came to her school for safety assemblies. 2 officers got out and walked toward the pool entrance. One was a man, probably in his 30s, with dark hair and a serious expression. The other was a woman, younger, with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. They both had that official walk that made Maya feel even smaller than she already did. The woman who had made the call practically ran over to them, talking fast before they could even ask what was going on. Officers, thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad you're here, she gushed, pointing at Maya and her friends. These girls showed up claiming to have a membership to our pool, but something just didn't feel right about it. I've never seen them here before, and when I asked them about it, they got defensive and rude. I think they might have stolen a membership card, or maybe they snuck in while the gate attendant wasn't paying attention. The male officer held up his hand to slow her down. Okay, let's take this one step at a time. I'm Officer Rodriguez, and this is Officer Chen. What's your name, ma'am? Karen Whitmore. I've lived in this community for 15 years. I know almost everyone here, and I've never seen these girls before today. Officer Rodriguez nodded, then turned to look at Maya and her friends. His expression wasn't mean, but it wasn't exactly friendly either, just professional and unreadable. "And what are your names?" he asked, pulling out a small notebook. Maya introduced herself and her friends, her voice barely above a whisper. Officer Chen gave them a small nod, like she was trying to be encouraging, but it didn't make Maya feel much better. "Okay, Maya," Officer Rodriguez said. "Can you tell me what happened here today?" Maya took a breath and explained again for what felt like the 100th time. How they came to the pool, how she showed her membership card, how it scanned and let them through, and how Mrs. Whitmore stopped them and accused them of stealing it. "Do you have the membership card with you?" he asked. Maya held it out with a shaky hand. Officer Rodriguez took it and examined it carefully, turning it over and looking at both sides. Then, he walked over to the gate attendant and had a quiet conversation with him. The teenage boy nodded several times, gesturing at the scanner. Mrs. Whitmore couldn't seem to stay quiet. She kept interjecting, talking over Maya whenever she tried to say something. "Officer, you have to understand. We have problems with people sneaking into this pool all the time. Just last month someone jumped the fence. We pay for these memberships and we have a right to feel safe in our own community." "Ma'am, I understand your concern," Officer Chen said, her voice patient but firm. "But let's let Officer Rodriguez handle this, okay?" Officer Rodriguez came back and handed the card to Maya. "The attendant confirms that he scanned this card when you arrived and it came up as valid in the system. He says you've been here before too. He recognizes you." "See?" one of Maya's friends said, relief flooding her voice. "We told you." But Mrs. Whitmore wasn't backing down. "That card could still be stolen or fake. Just because it scans doesn't mean it's really theirs. Can't you run the name or something? Check if it's really registered to their family?" Officer Rodriguez looked at Mrs. Whitmore for a long moment. "Ma'am, the membership has been verified by the facility. Unless you have actual evidence of a crime, I'm not sure what you expect us to do here." "I expect you to do your job," Mrs. Whitmore snapped, her face getting red. "These girls don't belong here, I can feel it. Call it intuition, call it whatever you want, but something is off." "What exactly seemed off?" Officer Chen asked, and there was something sharp in her tone now. "Can you describe what made you suspicious?" Mrs. Whitmore opened her mouth, then closed it. She gestured vaguely at Maya and her friends. They looked out of place. They were acting suspicious." "How were they acting suspicious?" Officer Chen pressed. "They were just, I don't know, nervous or something. Guilty looking." The woman who had defended Maya earlier spoke up from where she'd been standing nearby. "That's not true. I was right here. These girls walked in laughing and happy until you confronted them. They weren't acting suspicious at all." Another person chimed in, a man this time. "I've seen these kids here plenty of times before. I've seen that one," he pointed at Maya, "here with her mom at least a dozen times this summer." Officer Rodriguez looked at Mrs. Whitmore, and Maya could see something shift in his expression. Like he was starting to understand what was really going on here. "Do you have a parent we can contact?" he asked Maya, his voice gentler now. "Yes, sir. I already called my mom. She's on her way. She said she'll be here in about 20 minutes. Well, probably about 10 minutes now." He nodded and wrote something in his notebook. "Okay, we'll wait for her to arrive. In the meantime, can you give me her phone number?" Maya recited her mother's number, and Officer Rodriguez stepped away to make a call. Maya watched him, trying to read his body language, but she couldn't tell what he was thinking. Mrs. Whitmore huffed. "I can't believe this is how you're handling this. When I call the police, I expect action, not coddling potential criminals. They're children with a valid membership card," the woman who had defended them said, her voice rising. "What exactly do you want the police to do? Arrest them for being at a pool they have every right to be at? I want them to investigate properly, check their story, verify that they actually live where they say they live." Officer Chen stepped closer to Mrs. Whitmore. "Ma'am, I need you to lower your voice and step back a bit. You've made your complaint, and we're handling it. But I need you to let us do our job without interference." Maya felt tears building up again. This was so unfair. They really hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening? She looked at her friends, who both looked like they wanted to cry too. More people had gathered now, and Maya could hear them whispering. Some of them were clearly on their side, shaking their heads at Mrs. Whitmore. Others just watched like it was entertainment. Maya had never felt so exposed and humiliated in her entire life. Officer Rodriguez came back from making his call. I spoke with your mother. She confirmed everything you said. She's about 5 minutes away now. Of course she confirmed it, Mrs. Whitmore muttered. What else would she say? Officer Rodriguez turned to look at her, and his professional mask seemed to slip just a little. Ma'am, at this point I'm not sure what else you want us to do. The membership is valid. Multiple witnesses say they've seen these girls here before. Their parent is on the way to verify their identity. Is there something specific you saw them do that was illegal, Mrs. Whitmore crossed her arms tighter. I saw them trespassing. But they're not trespassing. They have a valid membership. Well, I didn't know that when I called. But you do now, Officer Chen pointed out. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya just wanted her mom to get there. She wanted to go home. She didn't even want to swim anymore. She just wanted this whole nightmare to be over. A black SUV pulled into the parking lot faster than it probably should have, tires crunching on the gravel. Maya felt relief wash over her the second she saw it. That was her mom's car. Everything was going to be okay now. The driver's door opened and her mother stepped out. Even from a distance, Maya could see that her mom was in full work mode. She was wearing one of her sharp business suits, the navy blue one she wore for important meetings. Her hair was pulled back perfectly, and she had on the heels that made her even taller than she already was. But it was her face that made Maya feel both better and more nervous at the same time. Her mom looked calm, but Maya knew that look. It was the look that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Her mother walked across the parking lot with purpose, her heels clicking on the pavement. She wasn't rushing exactly, but every step was deliberate, powerful. When she reached the pool entrance, Officer Rodriguez turned to face her. Are you Maya's mother? He asked. I am. Angela Johnson. She reached into her bag and pulled out her wallet, flipping it open to show her identification. Officer. Rodriguez took it and Maya watched his eyebrows shoot up. He looked at the ID, then at her mother, then back at the ID. Officer Chen leaned over to look too and her eyes went wide. You're the FBI director of the regional field office, Officer Rodriguez said, and it wasn't really a question. His whole posture had changed. He stood up straighter, more alert. That's correct, her mother said, her voice level and professional. She looked past the officers to where Maya was standing with her friends. Maya, baby, are you okay? Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying. Mrs. Whitmore had been standing off to the side, but now she stepped forward. She hadn't been close enough to hear what was said, but she clearly thought she should be part of the conversation. Are you the mother? Finally. Maybe you can explain to your daughter that she can't just... Angela held up one hand and Mrs. Whitmore stopped talking like someone had hit a mute button. Angela didn't say a word, didn't raise her voice, just held up that hand and looked at Mrs. Whitmore with an expression that could freeze fire. Then she turned back to Officer Rodriguez. Officer, can you please explain to me exactly what happened here today? From the beginning. Officer Rodriguez cleared his throat and started going through everything. How they got the call, what Mrs. Whitmore had reported, how they'd verified. Maya's membership card was legitimate. How multiple witnesses confirmed seeing the girls at the pool before. He was thorough and professional, and Maya could tell he was being very careful with his words. Angela listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, she nodded once. Thank you, officer. And did my daughter or her friends do anything illegal? Anything that warranted a police response? No, ma'am. The membership card is valid. They had every right to be here. I see. Angela turned to look at Mrs. Whitmore now, giving her full attention for the first time. And you are? Karen Whitmore, the woman said, some of her earlier confidence returning. She clearly didn't know who Angela was yet. I'm a resident here, and I was just trying to protect our community. You have to understand, we have problems with people trying to sneak into the pool all the time, and these girls just looked like what? Angela asked, her voice quiet but sharp as a razor. Mrs. Whitmore hesitated. Well, I didn't recognize them. You didn't recognize them, Angela repeated. And that was enough reason to call the police? I had reason to be suspicious. They were acting nervous, and my daughter was acting nervous because a grown woman was accusing her of being a criminal for trying to swim at a pool her family pays to be members of, Angela said, her voice still calm but getting colder with each word. Let me ask you something, Mrs. Whitmore. How many other children have you stopped and questioned at this pool? Mrs. Whitmore's mouth opened and closed. That's not relevant. I think it's very relevant. Do you question all the children here? Or just certain ones? I don't have to answer that. The woman who had defended Maya earlier spoke up. I've been coming to this pool for 3 years, and I've never seen you question a single white kid about their membership. Not once. A few other people murmured in agreement. Someone said, That's true. I've seen kids sneak their friends in before, and you've never said a word. Mrs. Whitmore's face was turning red now. That's completely different. How is it different? Angela asked. Those were just kids bringing friends. These girls were clearly... She stopped herself, seeming to realize she was about to say something she couldn't take back. Clearly what? Angela pressed. Please finish your sentence. The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Mrs. Whitmore looked around like she was hoping someone would help her, but even the people who had been casually watching before were now very interested in this conversation. Angela pulled out her phone and opened something up, then showed it to Officer Rodriguez and Officer Chen. This is the receipt from when I purchased our annual family membership 2 years ago. This is the confirmation email from this year's renewal. Here are photos of my daughter at this pool from various times over the past 2 summers. And this, she pulled up another screen, is the deed to our house on Maple Street, 3 blocks from here. She looked at Mrs. Whitmore again. My daughter presented a valid membership card. The staff member confirmed it in the system. She told you she lived in the neighborhood, and yet you still called the police. You accused her of stealing. You humiliated her in front of all these people. I want you to tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, what crime did you actually witness? Mrs. Whitmore tried to respond, but Angela wasn't done. Because from where I'm standing, the only thing my daughter is guilty of is trying to enjoy a summer day at a pool her family has every right to use. The only thing she did wrong in your eyes was exist in a space you didn't think she belonged in. Now wait just a minute, Mrs. Whitmore said, her voice getting defensive. I was just being careful. Anyone would have done the same thing. You can't blame me for being concerned about our community. Actually, I can blame you. I do blame you. And I'm going to make sure there are consequences for this. Officer Rodriguez spoke up carefully. Ma'am, what would you like us to do? I want a formal report filed. Every detail. What was reported, what was found. Everything. Angela's voice was firm. I also want contact information for the pool management and the homeowners association. This isn't just about my daughter anymore. This is about making sure this doesn't happen to any other child. Absolutely, Officer Rodriguez said, already writing in his notebook. We'll get that report filed right away. Mrs. Whitmore finally seemed to realize that this wasn't going how she'd expected. Look, maybe I overreacted a little, but you can't seriously be considering pressing charges over this. I was just trying to what? Angela cut her off. Trying to racially profile my daughter? Because that's what this was. You saw a young black girl and decided she didn't belong here, despite having zero evidence of any wrongdoing. I never said anything about race, Mrs. Whitmore protested, looking around at the crowd that had gathered. More people had come over now, and several of them had their phones out recording everything. This has nothing to do with race. You're making this into something it's not. Then explain to me what it was about, Angela challenged. If it wasn't about race, what was it? What did my daughter do that was so suspicious, Mrs. Whitmore tried to come up with an answer, but nothing she said made sense. She kept contradicting herself, saying the girls looked nervous, then saying they looked like they didn't belong, then saying she was just being careful. Each excuse sounded weaker than the last. Angela turned to the pool manager, who had been called over at some point and was standing nearby looking extremely uncomfortable. "Are you the manager here?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm Robert Chen. I'm so sorry about what happened today. This is completely unacceptable." "I appreciate that. I'll be contacting you next week to discuss this incident further. I'll also be reaching out to the Homeowners Association. This pool has a serious problem if my daughter can't swim here without being harassed." The manager nodded vigorously. "Of course, I'll give you all my contact information. And Mrs. Whitmore," he turned to look at her, "your membership is going to be suspended pending a full investigation into this incident." "What?" Mrs. Whitmore looked genuinely shocked. "You can't do that. I've been a member here for 15 years. And in those 15 years, we've had 3 complaints about you harassing other members. This is the final straw." Maya watched Mrs. Whitmore's face go from red to almost purple. She sputtered and tried to argue, but the manager held firm. Officer Chen pulled out a business card and handed it to Angela. "If you need anything else from us, please don't hesitate to call. And again, I apologize that you and your daughter had to go through this." Angela took the card, then walked over to Maya and pulled her into a tight hug. Maya finally let the tears fall, pressing her face into her mother's shoulder. All the fear and humiliation from the past hour came pouring out. "It's okay, baby," her mother whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not one single thing, you hear me?" Maya nodded against her mother's shoulder, feeling safe for the first time since this whole nightmare started. The next 48 hours felt like a blur to Maya. She'd gone home from the pool that day without ever getting in the water. Her fun Saturday turned into something she'd never forget, but not in the way she'd hoped. What she didn't know was that one of the people at the pool had recorded almost the entire confrontation. By Sunday morning, the video was everywhere. It had been posted to social media with a caption that read, "White woman calls police on 12-year-old black girl at community pool. Wait until you hear who her mother is." The video spread like wildfire. Thousands of shares turned into hundreds of thousands, then millions. People were outraged, sharing it with angry comments about racial profiling and Karen culture. News outlets picked it up, local news first, then regional, then national. Maya's mother sat her down Sunday evening to talk about it. "Baby, I need you to know that a lot of people are talking about what happened yesterday. The video is online and it's getting a lot of attention." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Everyone's going to see it?" "A lot of people already have. And that means you might get recognized. People might want to talk to you about it. Some of them will be supportive, but some might say things that are hurtful." Her mother took her hand. "I want you to be prepared for that. We don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. We can stay quiet and let this blow over, or we can use this moment to speak up. But that choice is yours." Maya thought about it. She thought about how humiliated she'd felt, standing there while everyone stared. But she also thought about the woman who had defended her, and the people who had spoken up to say they'd seen her at the pool before. She thought about all the other kids who might go through the same thing. "I want to talk about it," she said quietly. "If it helps other people, I want to say something." Her mother's eyes got a little watery, but she smiled. "Okay, then we'll do it together." By Monday morning, Mrs. Whitmore's life had completely changed. Someone had identified her in the video and shared her name online. It took less than 24 hours for people to find out where she worked. They found her social media accounts. They found photos and old posts. People started calling her employer, demanding that she be fired for her racist behavior. The marketing firm where Mrs. Whitmore worked released a statement Monday afternoon. "We are aware of the incident involving one of our employees. The behavior displayed in the video does not reflect our company's values of diversity and inclusion. After careful review, we have decided to terminate her employment effective immediately." Mrs. Whitmore tried to defend herself online, posting a long statement about how she was just trying to protect her community and that everyone was misunderstanding the situation. But every excuse she made just seemed to make things worse. People found examples of her past behavior, Other times she'd complained about neighbors or made comments that now looked very different in light of what had happened. Meanwhile, Angela was already taking action. She'd contacted a civil rights attorney Monday morning, someone she'd worked with before on discrimination cases. They met for lunch, going over every detail of what had happened. "You have a strong case," the attorney told her. "False police report, harassment, discrimination, and the fact that it happened to a minor makes it even more serious." "I don't care about money," Angela said. "I want real change. I want to make sure this doesn't happen to other families. We can push for that. Policy changes, training requirements, oversight. Make it part of any settlement." That evening, the Homeowners Association called an emergency meeting. The president of the association, Mr. Thompson, had been getting flooded with calls and emails ever since the video went viral. People demanding to know what they were going to do about it. Whether this was a pattern in the community, how they could allow this kind of behavior. Angela showed up to that meeting with her attorney and about 15 other residents of color who lived in the neighborhood. Maya's mother had spent the afternoon making calls, and she'd discovered that her family wasn't the only one who'd had problems. There was the Indian family who'd been questioned about whether they really lived there when they were moving in. The Latino family whose kids were always assumed to be the ones causing trouble at the playground. The Asian couple who'd been told they must be renting, not owning, their house. One by one, they stood up at that meeting and shared their stories. The room was packed, standing room only, and you could have heard a pin drop as people talked about their experiences. A woman named Priya spoke about how she'd been stopped while jogging in the neighborhood and asked if she was lost. "I was running past my own house," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "The house I've lived in for 4 years, and someone I'd never met felt entitled to question whether I belonged there." A man named David talked about how his teenage son had been followed by neighborhood watch volunteers while walking home from the bus stop. "My son was terrified. He thought something bad was going to happen to him, and why? Because he was a black teenager walking through his own neighborhood." The stories went on and on. Some people in the audience looked shocked, like they had no idea these things had been happening. Others nodded along, clearly not surprised at all. When it was Angela's turn to speak, she didn't mince words. "What happened to my daughter wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of discrimination that has been allowed to flourish in this community, and it needs to stop now." She laid out specific demands: mandatory bias training for anyone serving in a neighborhood watch or oversight capacity, a clear anti-discrimination policy with real consequences for violations, a formal complaint process for residents who experience harassment, regular diversity and inclusion meetings, and a public apology from the Homeowners Association for allowing this culture to develop. Mr. Thompson looked overwhelmed but nodded as he took notes. "We hear you, all of you, and I apologize that it took something like this for us to address these issues. We'll implement these changes. You have my word." "I appreciate that," Angela said, "but we'll be watching to make sure words turn into action. And if they don't, we'll take further steps." The meeting lasted almost 3 hours. When it finally ended, several of the white residents came up to Angela and the other families who'd shared their stories. Some apologized. Others thanked them for speaking up, saying they had no idea these things were happening and wanted to help make changes. But not everyone was supportive. As Angela and Maya left the meeting, a small group of residents stood near the exit, talking in low voices and shooting angry looks their way. One man said something about troublemakers and playing the race card. Another woman complained that they were making the neighborhood look bad. Maya heard them and moved closer to her mother. Angela put an arm around her shoulders and kept walking, her head held high. The next day, Maya's story was everywhere. Major news networks wanted interviews. National civil rights organizations reached out to offer support. Her mother carefully screened every request, turning down most of them but agreeing to a few that felt right. They did one interview together for a local news station. The reporter was kind and asked Maya thoughtful questions about how she felt during the incident. "I was scared," Maya said, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't understand why she thought we were doing something wrong. We were just trying to swim. And I kept thinking, what if this happens to me again? What if next time my mom can't come? What if next time it's worse?" The interviewer nodded sympathetically. "What do you want people to know?" Maya thought about it for a moment. "I want people to know that kids like me, we just want to be kids. We want to swim and play and have fun like everyone else. and we shouldn't have to prove we belong everywhere we go. The interview ended with Angela talking about the need for systemic change, not just individual accountability. She spoke about implicit bias, about how good intentions weren't enough, about how communities needed to actively work toward inclusion. After the interview aired, Maya's phone started blowing up with messages from friends and even people she didn't know, telling her she was brave, that they were proud of her, that her words mattered. But that night, lying in bed, Maya didn't feel particularly brave. She felt tired of having to think about things that her white friends never had to think about, tired of being the center of attention for something she never wanted to happen in the first place. Her mother came in to say goodnight and sat on the edge of her bed. "How are you really doing, baby?" Maya shrugged. "I don't know. Everyone keeps saying I'm brave, but I don't feel brave. I just feel tired. You are brave, whether you feel it or not, and I'm so proud of you." Her mother brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I know this is hard. I wish you didn't have to go through it. But you're handling it with so much grace." "Mom," Maya asked quietly, "does this happen to you too? Like, do people treat you like you don't belong places?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. "Yes, not as often as it used to, but yes. Even now, even with my position, sometimes people make assumptions about me. How do you deal with it?" "I remember who I am. I remember my worth. And I use my voice and my position to try to make things better for the people coming up behind me. That's all we can do, really. Keep pushing forward and pulling others up with us." Maya nodded, feeling a little better. At least she wasn't alone in this. 6 months had passed since that day at the pool, and a lot had changed in Maya's neighborhood. The homeowners association had followed through on most of their promises, though Angela and the other families kept close, watched to make sure they didn't backslide. Every person who volunteered for Neighborhood Watch now had to complete a 4-hour training on implicit bias and community relations. The association had hired a diversity consultant who came in quarterly to lead workshops. They'd created a community advisory board that included representatives from all the different groups living in the neighborhood, and they actually listened to what people had to say. But the biggest change was harder to measure. People were talking to each other more. White families who'd lived there for years were having conversations they'd never had before with their neighbors of color. Some of those conversations were uncomfortable, but they were happening, and that was progress. Maya had become something of a local celebrity, though she wasn't always sure how she felt about that. She'd been invited to speak at her school's assembly about standing up for yourself and others. A local civil rights organization had asked her to share her story at their youth leadership conference. She'd even been featured in a national magazine article about young activists. The attention was overwhelming sometimes, but Maya tried to use it for good. She'd started writing about her experiences, putting her thoughts and feelings into words. Her English teacher encouraged her to submit an essay to a regional youth journalism competition. Maya wrote about that day at the pool, but also about all the smaller moments that came before and after. The times she'd felt like she had to be extra polite, extra careful, extra perfect just to be treated the same as everyone else. When she won first place in the competition, her school made a big deal about it. They put her picture in the trophy case and everything. Maya was proud, but she also felt weird about it. She hadn't wanted to become the face of racial justice in her school. She just wanted to be a regular kid who also happened to speak up about important things. The hardest part was that some kids at school treated her differently now. Some looked at her like she was fragile, like they had to be extra careful around her. Others seemed to resent the attention she was getting. She'd overheard a girl in her grade say something about how Maya was milking it for attention. That had hurt more than she expected it to. But she'd also found real friends through all of this. Kids who reached out to say they'd experienced similar things, who understood what it felt like to be questioned about whether you belonged somewhere. They'd formed a little group that met during lunch sometimes just to talk and support each other. As for Mrs. Whitmore, her story had taken some unexpected turns. After losing her job and facing intense public backlash, she'd essentially disappeared from public view for a few months. She'd deleted all her social media accounts. She'd stopped going to the pool entirely, even before her membership was permanently revoked. But then something strange happened. As part of a settlement agreement with Angela's attorney, Mrs. Whitmore had been required to complete a program on racial bias and do community service at the local multicultural community center. At first, everyone assumed she'd do the minimum required and then disappear. But she didn't. She kept showing up at the center even after her required hours were done. She volunteered in the after-school program, helping kids with homework. She attended workshops and lectures. People who worked there said she seemed genuinely different, like something had actually clicked for her. Maya heard about this from her mother, who'd been getting updates through her attorney. At first, Maya didn't want to hear about it. She didn't care if Mrs. Whitmore had changed or not. That woman had humiliated her, made her feel unsafe in her own neighborhood, and caused her family so much stress and pain. But as time went on, Maya found herself curious. She mentioned it one day to the diversity consultant who sometimes came to speak at her school. The consultant, Ms. Rodriguez, had actually been working with Mrs. Whitmore at the community center. "I can't share details," Ms. Rodriguez said carefully, "but I can tell you that real change is possible when people are willing to do the hard work of examining their own biases. It's not easy and it doesn't excuse past harm, but it can happen." "Do you think she's really changed?" Maya asked. "I think she's trying. Whether that's enough is not for me to say. That's for the people she hurt to decide." Maya thought about that conversation for weeks. She didn't owe Mrs. Whitmore forgiveness. She knew that. Her mom had told her that over and over. Forgiveness was something you gave when you were ready, if you were ever ready and nobody could force it. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Maya was at the community center herself, there for a youth leadership meeting. As she walked down the hallway, she saw Mrs. Whitmore sitting on a bench outside one of the classrooms, looking nervous. Their eyes met, and for a second, neither of them moved. Then Mrs. Whitmore stood up slowly, like she was afraid Maya might run away. "Maya," she said quietly, "I don't expect you to talk to me. I know I don't deserve that. But I want you to know that I'm sorry, truly deeply sorry for what I put you through. There's no excuse for how I treated you. I was wrong and I'm trying to be better." Maya stood there, not sure what to say. Part of her wanted to walk away without a word. Part of her wanted to yell at this woman for everything she'd put her through, but mostly she just felt tired of carrying around all the anger and hurt. "Okay," Maya said finally. It was the only word she could get out. Mrs. Whitmore nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for listening. That's more than I deserve." She walked away then, not trying to force more conversation or make excuses. Maya stood in the hallway for a minute, processing what had just happened. She wasn't sure how she felt about it. The apology didn't erase what had happened. It didn't undo the humiliation or the fear or any of it. But maybe it was a start toward something. When Maya got home that evening, she told her mother about the encounter. Angela listened carefully, then pulled Maya into a hug. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "I don't know. Confused, I guess. I'm still mad about what happened. But I also don't want to spend the rest of my life being angry at her." "That's very mature of you, baby. And you're right. You don't have to forgive her, but you also don't have to carry that anger around forever. It's okay to let it go when you're ready." The school year ended and summer came around again. Maya had been nervous about going back to the pool, but she was determined not to let what happened take that away from her. On the first really hot day of summer, she grabbed her swimsuit and called her friends. They showed up together, all nervous energy and forced bravery. But when they walked through that gate, presented their membership cards, and headed to their favorite spot by the deep end, it felt like reclaiming something important. Maya dove into the water, letting it wash over her. When she came up for air, she saw her mom sitting in a lounge chair nearby, wearing sunglasses and reading a book but clearly keeping watch. Maya waved and her mom waved back with a smile. Other families were there too, all different colors and backgrounds, kids playing together without thinking twice about it. It wasn't perfect. The neighborhood still had work to do. Conversations still needed to happen, and change was slow and sometimes frustrating. But it was better than it had been. And that mattered. Over the summer, Maya kept writing. She wrote about her experiences, about what she'd learned, about her hopes for the future. Her English teacher had encouraged her to keep a journal, and she'd filled up almost 2 notebooks already. One piece she wrote was about courage. Not the kind of courage that felt brave and heroic, but the everyday kind. The courage to keep showing up even when you're scared. The courage to speak up even when your voice shakes. The courage to hope that things can get better even when they seem impossible. She shared it at a community event in August, standing at a podium in front of what felt like hundreds of people. Her hands trembled as she held her paper, but her voice stayed steady. What happened to me that day at the pool was wrong, she read. But what happened after showed me something important. Change is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. It takes all of us speaking up, showing up, and refusing to accept that things have to stay the way they've always been. When she finished, people stood up and clapped. Maya saw her mom in the front row, tears streaming down her face, clapping harder than anyone. She saw some of her teachers, kids from school, neighbors both old and new. And in the back of the room, barely visible, she thought she saw Mrs. Whitmore standing and clapping too. That night, lying in bed, Maya thought about how far she'd come in just 1 year. She'd gone from a regular kid who just wanted to swim with her friends to someone who spoke at events and won journalism awards. She'd discovered strength she didn't know she had. But more than that, she'd learned that her voice mattered, that speaking up could create real change. That even when things seemed hopeless, there were always people willing to stand up and fight for what was right. She still had bad days sometimes. Days when the weight of everything felt too heavy, when she was tired of being strong, when she just wanted to be a regular kid without all this extra pressure. But those days were getting fewer and farther between, and when they came, she remembered something her mom had told her. You don't have to carry this alone, baby. That's what community is for. We lift each other up. Maya turned off her light and closed her eyes, already thinking about what she wanted to write about tomorrow, because her story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And she had so much more to say.